Mikey here for another edition of The Mikey Show, your favorite black sheep in the audio industry. What the issue is, happens to all of us, is if one channel doesn't work. It's happened to us in our past. Sometimes it may happen to you. And here's how to figure it out, because it's pretty simple. It's the process of elimination. So let's say you've got your amp here, okay? And let's say you've got tubes in that amp. And then you've got left and right analog connections, right, that go down to the preamp. I'm doing this kind of backwards. And then left and right that go down to the DAC or phono pre. Okay, and that's here. And these are left and right connections. Out of the amp, we've got speaker here. And we've got speaker here. Okay? And so this is how we go. We go from the DAC, left and right, to the preamp, left and right to the amp. Okay, so we've got one channel that doesn't work. The first thing you're going to do is check your connections to the speaker cables. It's very common for these to come loose, especially if you're spades and you're cranked down on a spade. If they too much weight on the speaker cable, it can make them come loose or touch. You want to make sure that your connections are good on everything, okay? So that's the first thing to do, check your connections. The next thing you're going to do, and it's the same with if the preamp has tubes, the next thing I would do is you take your tubes, because most commonly in a tube amp, you may have a problem with the tubes. Tubes don't always wear out the same time. One may go out before another. So you're going to take and swap your tubes. First, you're going to, remember, there's little tubes and there's big tubes. First, you're going to start with the little tubes. Swap them out, left to right. Let's say this channel is not working, okay? The right channel isn't working. When you switch your little tubes, does this channel stop working? And now all of a sudden this one starts. If it does, you know it's a bad tube on one of the little guys. And it's the one that you moved over here, because the channel not working follows the tube. If you move the tubes over and still this channel's bad, now you try the big tubes. You reverse those back and forth. If this still stays out, you know it's not the tube. If it moves to this side, you know it's the big tube. Okay? The next step is you can go to your preamp. Do the same thing, swap with the tubes in the preamp to see does it move side to side. If it stays on the side, then we know it's not the tubes. We've done all the tubes. Now we've gone through all the tubes and we know it's not a tube. The next step is to go from here, we can take the RCA connectors and we can switch them at the amp. We take the amp and we switch them at the preamp. So the left goes over to the right and the right goes over to the left. We swap them and we see, does it move? Does it move? This is the output of the preamp, right? Our signal path is moving this way, okay? So we're going to switch these two here at the preamp, and we're going to see if it changes, it means it's something on before the preamp. It's not at the amp, okay? If we switch these and they're still good, and it stays over here, then we know it's not the output of the preamp that is making it bad, because we just switched it. If this was a bad output, it would move to the other side. Okay, then you can take, if we know that these both have good outputs, we can take them at the amp side, and we can switch them here from left to right and right to left, right at the amp, okay? When we do that, we will know, is it the output of the amp? Is there something happening at the output of the amp? If we know both of these channels are good from preamp to amp, if we switch them and it moves, then it's something on the input section, most likely, of the amp. Because we switch tubes, the output section is good. Okay, now if you do that swap here to here and here to here, and it still stays bad on this side, now we need to do the same thing between the DAC and the preamp. Okay, so since our signal's moving this way, we're going to switch these two and see if it moves to check the DAC output. If it moves to this side, we know the DAC output is the thing that's the problem. If it doesn't move, then we're going to switch to these two up here to see if it's the preamp input stage. If we switch them and it moves, then we know it's the preamp stage. If we switch them and it doesn't move, then we know the DAC is good, the preamp is good, the amp is good. Now the only thing we have to do is to change the speaker cables. We go from speaker cables from left to right. If it doesn't move, then it's a bad speaker, okay? But if we do move the speaker cables and it moves over to here, now we know that it's bad speaker cables, okay? So it's a pretty simple procedure to find out what's wrong in this chain if one channel is not working. It's very easy to figure out. It does take a lot of switching around, but it helps you to determine, is the problem on the DAC output stage? Is the problem on the preamp input or output? Is the problem on the amp input or output? Is the problem in the cables? This helps you to determine if it's a bad cable, if it's a bad output, if it's a bad input. You know, the easiest way to determine cables is you just swap the cables. You don't put you do them completely. Like you take the left one, the whole cable, put it on the right side, put the whole cable from the right side, put it on the left side, and then when you swap cables, then you can tell if it's a bad cable or not. So these are just ways to determine what's wrong on one side when you're getting one channel that doesn't work. It's easy to find out. Most of the time, it's a connection or maybe it's a bad tube, but just wanted to bring that to you to help you guys in your hi-fi journey. See ya.